All right, here we are. We are at the final 5 episode commentaries for the final 5 episodes of Knight Rider. Can you believe it? I certainly can't. Recording these episode commentaries for, was it 2 years? It's kind of crazy. But here we go. We're going to cover Hills of Fire today. Definitely one of the better of the 5 remaining episodes, and we'll see if we can dig up some interesting nuggets of information that maybe you didn't know. So join us as we go over Hills of Fire. Production 60220, Hills of Fire. This episode was written by Jackson Gillis, directed by Robert E.L. Brawlver. It originally aired on NBC Friday night 8 p.m. on February 14th, 1986. Happy Valentine's Day. It was filmed from November 18th through the 26th of 1985. It was the 80th episode to air, but the 77th episode to be produced. This is the last episode of the series where the airing order and the production order are out of whack. The last 4 episodes were filmed in the order that they were aired. The synopsis reads as follows. Devon asks Michael to investigate a mysterious forest fire at a national park. All right, with all of that, let's see what we can figure out here. So we're going to start with some notes we have regarding this episode from NBC itself. They didn't give too many notes. They simply said it was an average script delivered, although there is some fun with the drone. So there's what NBC thought of the episode. So as I mentioned a minute ago, this episode was directed by Bob Brawlver. Bob, you may recognize that name. He was the stunt coordinator for season 1 of Knight Rider, and he came back a couple times to direct. He was also at the beginning of season 2 a little bit. He was in Brother's Keeper. But he directed, I believe, White Line Warriors also, and he directed this episode here. This, I think, was his last contribution to Knight Rider before it ended. So do you remember in our previous episode commentary, we talked about how the insert dash got kind of a facelift, and you could see especially in the close-up of KITT's voice modulator, you could see how the labels were redone and the bevels around some of the LEDs were a little sharper. Well, remember that episode that we covered was out of order, right? So Hills of Fire was recorded before that episode, and by that episode, I mean our previous one, Night of a Thousand Devils. So this one was recorded prior to that. This is actually the episode where that transition takes place. So if you watch the close-up scenes of KITT's voice, you'll see it fluctuate between this old style and the newer style, which we'll show you here in a second. So a couple minor details here. We've got Daryl inside of KITT after Michael rescued him from the forest fire. So this is the season 4 insert car. Definitely one of the nicer of the insert cars they used over the 4 years. You can see the door panel here. The door panel, it's hard to tell in this scene, but on Trans Ams that came with a cloth interior, this panel is cloth up here too. But in this scene, or in this car, these are leather tops. And it makes you, I mean, clearly these panels were I'm guessing, pulled from a different car, or the seats were added to this particular insert car, but those panels definitely do not match with the cloth seats we see there. And for those of you building replicas, I know this has come up before regarding this overhead console, and specifically around the LEDs in the front and the side. There is a bezel or frame around the LEDs here and here. So any of you guys trying to replicate this console, which is a nice looking console, albeit a little less functional than the earlier ones since these are all LEDs, but there are bezels around the LEDs, and there's your proof right there. And in a minute, we'll show you the proof of the bezel around here. Changing angles, we see Michael here wearing not a comlink, right? He's once again wearing just another wrist watch. All right, so once again, we've got the hardtop stunt car, same one since season 1. And in this episode, in case you're curious, there were 6 Trans Ams used for the filming, and 2 of them, it's actually their last appearance in the series, and we'll go over that here in a little bit. But the 6 cars that were used in this episode are, obviously, this hardtop stunt car, the season 3 and 4 hero car, the backup to the hero car from season 1 / season 2 insert car / one of the 2 high traction drop down cars, our general purpose T-top stunt car, the same one that's been around since the start of season 3, the season 4 insert car, and finally the full-time Super Pursuit mode car. There are your 6 Trans Ams used as kit in this episode. Another detail we see about the insert car is that while it had a lower console shell in place, Knight Rider shell, there was never any electronics in there. You can see it's just an open cavity down to the factory Trans Am center console. Oh, and by the way, I just made a mistake a minute ago, but I'm not going to re-edit it because I want to show you that I make mistakes too. Back whenever we showed you this scene right here, I was calling this the insert car. This is not the insert car. This is actually the hero car. Now, whenever we look at this picture, you might think, oh, this is the hero car too. It is not. This is the insert car. How can you tell them apart? Well, when you see it from this angle, it's actually really easy to tell them apart. Take a look at these LEDs on the overhead console. How many are there? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. The insert car had 8. The hero car, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 10 here with yellow, smaller LEDs above it. 8 here, all red. That's how you can tell them apart. If there's 8, it's the insert car. If there's 10, it's the hero car. Gomez, it's Wilson. Yes, Vernon Wells makes his one and only appearance in the series here, probably well known from Mad Max. I remember him from an early episode of MacGyver too, for some reason. But yeah, Vernon Wells couldn't let this episode pass by without at least mentioning his awesome appearance in this episode. Here, this is what I'm talking about. So you see how in this particular scene, we see KITT's newer voice box with the labels kind of corrected, the sharper edges on the bezels, things like that. We've got a small editing mistake here. So Michael brings Daryl back to Tess's house. And within seconds of him arriving, Deputy Clark arrives. All right, so Deputy Clark is already, he's off camera right now, but he's already talking to Tess and Daryl, and Michael is laughing, as you can see. But whenever they cut to Michael to show his reaction, look at the police car in the background and watch how it moves. See how the police car's moving? Well, no one's supposed to be in the police car. Deputy Clark is actually supposed to be over here. So I think this was a cut that was filmed while Deputy Clark was still pulling up, but it was put in the episode after Clark was already here, if that makes sense. All right, so we're in the Foundation workroom, as the script calls it. And this in reality was filmed on stage 1 at Universal. This is that what I call the staircase set, which was built at the beginning of season 3 as kind of an all-purpose set. We saw it used as a room in the Foundation in Halloween Night, as Boyd LaSalle's control room in Night in Disgrace. We see it in Fright Night. We'll see it in Voodoo Night. I mean, it was all over the place. Night Flight to Freedom it's in. But I think they just built this as kind of a general purpose room that they could have to build sets in. All of these are, of course, computerized, fake computer props from Modern Props, which rented all of these types of things to the show back in the day. All these units that you can see in the background here. All right, so here we see Sid for the first time, the satellite infiltration drone in his original configuration. And again, if you look right here, you'll see a panel. This is also from Modern Props, and it looks very, very similar to the laser from Trust Doesn't Rust. But you can see looks like maybe they are a little bit different. We see 3 knobs down here and lights and switches over here. The side of the case looks the same. Modern Props was known for building multiple copies of things in the same casing or chassis, but with different light and button configurations, and here's a perfect example of that. How was Sid floating in the air? Well, he technically wasn't. There's an arm off camera mounted underneath that was attached to the camera, so as the camera moved in, Sid moved in as well. Sorry to ruin the magic for you. All right, so we see Michael and Kit pulling into Sandra Rusk's office in the background. What do we see? Yes, more Universal Studios crew, semi-tractor trailers, aka the Comtron vehicles, right there making yet another cameo appearance. And we get this point of view shot of the homeless man trying to get some money out of the ATM. I point this out because this is one of the rare times where you see Kit's voice box actually working in the car, albeit not very well, right? I mean, you hear Kit talking, but you just kind of see the voice blinking. It's not really in sync, but you got to give him props for trying, I guess. And speaking of guest stars, here's Nana Visitor, who would go on to play her most famous role in Star Trek Deep Space Nine, but she's making her one and only appearance here. She was also in an episode of MacGyver right around this time, I remember as well. You can tell I watched a lot of MacGyver. All right, so moving forward, we see Sid in Kit's passenger seat, getting ready to be launched. One thing to note, if you look at this dashboard, you can tell this isn't the hero car. It was just one of the cars that kind of had a fake dash on the top, because you can see how the bottom is just cut off here. There's just an opening right there. And for those of you guys, Trans Am guys, you can tell that that pull handle is actually one of the hooks or the receivers for the T-top bag in a Trans Am that goes in the trunk. So they just repurposed it. They probably had a lot of those laying around. All right, and then we see Kit intercepting Deputy Clark here. Obviously not Deputy Clark, some kind of a stuntman, which is to be expected since he's about to flip over Kit's door. And taking a nap on the ground, Harold Hal Frizzle, one of Knight Rider's most famous crewmen. We see him in so many cameo appearances throughout the series. This is probably one of his last. We'll have to see if we can spot him in the last 4 episodes. All right, so Michael's opening the box that has Sid in it. You can see the box appears to be empty, but wait, there's a soccer ball in it. So clearly the soccer ball's not in it there, but for the insert shot, it is. And take a look at the soccer ball. It's mostly clean with a couple scuffs on it. See, he pulls it out, just a couple scuffs, and then it turns to this soccer ball, which is dirty, and this is the one that actually transforms into Sid. Wonder whatever happened to Sid, to that soccer ball. Wonder if it's still out there. That'd be really, really cool to find. All right, so then fully he deploys, heads out, and this is the hero car. And you get a great look at the dash, at least the top of the dash, and just how put together it was and how worn it is already. You know, you can see the panels just have screws in the corner. This one's kind of fallen out. You can see some of the vinyl wrap is starting to shrink around the edges from the California heat. So, you know, the dash is definitely showing its age at this point. All right, here's what I was talking about. There's your proof, you replica guys, that there was actually a bezel around these LEDs and they weren't just cut into the fiberglass console itself. Michael's back at Sandra Rusk's office. We have seen this office building before. The one that comes to mind is 10 Wheel Trouble. This was the sheriff's office, I believe, where Joe Flynn was being held. Just a couple notes, a little sidebar here. Some of the comments or some of the original script details that didn't make it into this episode. So Wilson, played by Vernon Wells, his first name is actually Robert, and Deputy Clark's first name is also Robert, Bob. Let's see what else. A description of the first time Sid is activated. Tiny rods telescope out of Sid's equator and converge to form a gyro-stabilizing ring. 3 metal probes pop up. What else? When Michael originally launches Sid, which we just showed you a minute ago, he imitates Devin's voice and remarks, "Be careful, Sydney," which I thought was funny. And at the very end of this episode, we'll see Daryl actually get to drive KITT into the semi. And the script has an additional line that KITT says, where KITT remarks that he could get used to Daryl driving, as Daryl is lighter on the steering and gentler on the gas than Michael. All right, we get a new feature on KITT, the traction spikes. Makes you wonder why they didn't just use the high traction drop downs that April installed from season 2. You'd think that would be enough to get them up the incline, but maybe Bonnie just didn't want to use any of April's inventions. I don't know. But yes, we see the traction spikes here, and if you look at this, they actually like took a plasma cutter and cut a wheel, in half. If you look right there, you can see some of the burn marks from cutting the aluminum, and they cut the hubcap and they cut the tire. That's a pretty neat display. Again, it would be really cool if that was still out there somewhere. I'd love to see that. All right, Flanders Automotive here. Another reused Knight Rider filming location. We first saw this way back in season 1 in Night Moves for Cali Family Garage and Trucking. We saw it in The Wrong Crowd as the cafe across the street from where the semi was being hidden after it was hijacked. We saw the back of this building in Speed Demons. So this place has definitely been around the block a number of times. The building is still there, by the way. All right, so we see Sandra and Daryl and Wilson in Sandra's station wagon. And nothing of great excitement to point out, except for the fact that this car has a tow bar that they added to it, which makes sense because they did do some interior filming of the actors inside, so they hooked up to it. But that's very reminiscent of the tow bar we saw way back in seasons 1 and 2 on KITT. And speaking of KITT, this is the final appearance of the Super Pursuit Mode car. I know you guys are devastated that we won't see the Super Pursuit Mode car again. But here it is, the final appearance. It was a pretty interesting design, you have to give it that. This car, unfortunately, was crushed when the show ended, as you probably know if you've been following some of our other videos. All right, another angle of the Hero Car's dash, and this time it's the voice box, and you can see, again, just look at the wear around the voice box and the bubbling in the paint, and just how worn it really is. These were props, and they weren't meant to last a long time, and you can see even within the show's filming, it was degrading. All right, so after KITT is set on fire, one of 2 times he'll be set on fire in this episode. That must have done a ton of damage to the paint if you think about it. But he hits the traction spikes, right? And we see them pop out. There you go. This was not on an actual car. This was an insert shot. They probably just stood a tire up and activated those. Because then in the next scene when you see KITT peeling out, you can tell there's no spikes coming out of the tires. All right, and here's a late season 4 appearance of the rubber shell on KITT. This is on the hardtop stunt car. This might be, I can't guarantee it. We're going to have to go through the last 4 episodes. This might be the last appearance of the rubber shell, too. We didn't see it too much in season 4. We saw it a little bit earlier in season 4, but later in season 4 we haven't seen it. But rubber shell on KITT, possibly its last appearance. All right, here we go again. So KITT's extinguishing the flamethrower here, but if you look, his hood is still on fire. And this is, let's see, what car is this? I think this is that general purpose T-top stunt car. That's what it looks like. So yeah, they obviously had some hood damage on the car from this scene. All right, and then we get this brief look here at the original one. This is actually one of the 3 original cars procured for the pilot. This was the backup to the Hero car in season 1, the insert car in season 2, one of 2 cars that had the high traction drop downs. And actually, if you look, the high traction drop downs are currently engaged in this scene, which is kind of neat. And it's funny because this episode doesn't have high traction drop downs, it has traction spikes in it, but whatever. This is one of the 2 original Knight Rider cars that we own. And one day we're going to get the high traction drop downs working again on this car. Of course, that might mean we have to put 14-inch rims on the back. We'll figure that out later. But this is the final appearance of this car in the series as well. Alrighty, folks, that concludes Hills of Fire. Just like that, it's over. Doesn't it feel like we just started? We've got 4 left. Next up is Night Flight to Freedom. There's got to be some good stuff in there, right? We'll figure out a few good tidbits for you. As always, thanks so much for watching. Hope you enjoyed it. If you did, give us a like, give us a subscribe. We would appreciate it. Thanks. We'll talk to you soon.